Welcome back to Planet 40k guys. We've got something new in this video. We're going to be talking about Necron's secondary heroes. So that's secondary objectives, what are the hero units within our codex that can do those secondaries. Now before we get into this video, make sure you are liking the video, make sure you are subscribing to the channel. Let's do that before we start off on each of these videos. So now we did do this style of video, the secondary hero video. It was in the, I think it might have been the Prior Nexus or the deck before that even. So this is a bit of an update to the new mission deck and to, well, all the updates we've had so far, I guess. So what are we actually talking about? Let's break this down a little bit more. When we're talking about secondary heroes, what do I actually mean? Now, what I'm talking about here is mainly action secondaries. There's not actually that many in terms of secondaries. There are maybe some primaries in the mission deck, but in terms of action secondaries, you've got Established Locus, which is one. You've got Sabotage, you've got Cleanse, Recover Assets. And then I also want to kind of add into this video location secondaries, which are not actions. So, for example, Behind Enemy Lines, Area Denial, Engaging on fronts, those kind of secondaries that require a unit to just be within a certain location. Now, of course, there are other location secondaries such as Defend Stronghold, not Cleanse, what's the other one? Secure No Man's Land. Those ones are a little bit, my voice broke there. Those ones are a little bit easier to do. You can do that with virtually any unit. So I want to talk about the more difficult ones like Behind Enemy Lines, and you need certain units or certain speed to get to those locations. So that's the ones we're talking about today. Well, we've got 7 today that we're talking about. In fact, I'm going to put them on the screen for you now just so that we're on the same page. They're the 7 that we're going to be talking about in this video. So we're going to kick this off with one of my favourite units in the codex. It's a Hexmark Destroyer. Now, as I go through these units, I'm going to talk about the key points to why it relates to secondaries, and then the secondaries that they mainly can do and could potentially do but may not be as good at doing. So key points for a Hexmark Destroyer: 75 points, cheap. In terms of your point expenditure, you don't want to be spending too many points to gain one little objective. You don't want to be spending 200 points or using, the Silent King to do an action. That's not how the game works, and you're not going to get your win rate up by doing that. You need to get those points for as little as possible in terms of your points cost. Anything that's sort of 75 to 90 points is probably what I'm looking at, or maybe even less in fact. 50 to 90 points is where you'd be looking at, 100 points at a push. But 75 points is good. Why he's so good, he's got Lone Operative, so you need to be within 12 inches to do anything to him, whether that's charging him or firing at him. So he's very, even if you stick him out in the open, doesn't matter, you need to get within 12 inches to do anything, and even when you do, he's going to have a free overwatch as well, which is kind of handy. Then he's got Deep Strike as well, which is very useful for a lot of secondaries, which we'll talk about in a second. Also double useful for the Hypercrypt Legion. Now on the right hand side of the screen there are a list of the 7 secondaries that I'm talking about today. I'll quickly go through them for this unit. Behind Enemy Lines, can a Hexmark do it? Yes, of course he can. He's got Deep Strike, and he just pops in as long as you're 9 inches away, or Cosmic Precision if you're in the Hypercrypt. He can get behind enemy lines, not a problem, so I've put it in green. Established Locust, it's in the enemy deployment zone or the centre of the battlefield. Again, with Deep Strike, I'm not saying it's easy, but he doesn't need any buffs, any synergy, any detachment rules to be able to do this. He can just do it all on his own. Engaging on fronts, yeah, of course he can. Same reason, Deep Strike. Sabotage, of course anyone can do Sabotage, but Sabotage still requires you to finish it at the end of your opponent's turn, and that means you're going to be dipping your toe into the objective, and it can't be within your deployment zone. So it means he can be shot at with true line of sight, even if you're on the ground floor of a ruin. If there's true line of sight, because he's inside a terrain feature, he can be shot at. So I'll put it in red. It's doable. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not as easy as Behind Enemy Lines. Area Denial is the centre of the battlefield. Yep, he can do that. Of course you need to deny your opponent having units there, but he can do it. Cleanse is just an action. 75 points to spend on an action is perfectly fine for me. And recover assets, yeah, in any of the 3 deployment areas, the no man's land, your deployment, your opponent's deployment. He can be in any of those 3 at any given time with Deep Strike, or Hyperphasing if you're playing the Hypercrypt Legion. So he can do recover assets, and again, it's an action, and it ends at the end of your turn now. It has changed with this mission deck. So out of the 7, I would say 6 of them are very doable with a Hexmark Destroyer. Sabotage is doable, but there's probably better options, so I've left that one in red. Let's move on to the next one. I've got Necron Immortals. 70 points for a unit of 5, so it's cheaper than a Hexmark Destroyer. OC 2, so that's going to be handy because you do need some OC. What else we got? We got Battle Line. In some mission decks, you're allowed to advance and still do actions, or shoot and do actions. I can't remember what it is now. You know what I mean. Battle Line get a bit of a buff to certain primary missions and things. And you could opt to go with the Tesla option, which gives you Assault. Now that's not going to be helpful for the actions, unless the primary mission decks allows for it, but you can potentially move into a location and score a location secondary. So as for the actual secondaries, behind enemy lines, I've put it in red, and I was debating whether to put it in maybe even orange, because with synergies, they can be absolutely rapid. You stick a Chronomancer in there and a Overlord with Translocation Shroud. You could move in advance rather, and you auto advance in 6 inches. You're then going to fire, and then you're going to move again with the Chronomancer ability. These guys can become quite rapid, but that requires synergy, so that's why I put it in red. They can't do it on their own for just 70 points. They're just going to be moving standard Immortal movement. Established Locus is the centre of the battlefield. I'm pretty sure they could get there if they needed to. Obviously, enemy DZ isn't as easy. Hypercrypt, of course, is a little bit different, but it's not that easy for, foot soldiers, basically. Engage on the front, I mean, that's going to be a green for pretty much any unit, to be honest with you. Maybe I shouldn't have actually put that in there, but it's in there, whatever. We've got Sabotage, same reason as the Hexmark, really. Out of your deployment zone, if you're sticking your toe in an objective, you can be shot at with line of sight. Area Denial, yep, they can do that. Cleanse and Recover Assets are actions that they can do, and it ends at the end of your turn. Yeah, not a problem. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 7 I'd say they can do comfortably, and the other 2 are maybes. The Koptic Reanimator is next, another 75 point unit, which is in the nice sweet spot for spending on secondaries. It's got a 4+ Feel No Pain save, which makes it quite reliable, quite durable. I know it hasn't got the invulnerable save, but a Feel No Pain save is pretty nice. And it's got poor offense, which I know that's a negative key point, but it's also a positive because you're not going to shoot with it, you're not going to charge with it, so it's definitely a very good action hero. Whereas going back to those Immortals, they kind of want to shoot. So unless you've got the mission with primary, with battle line units being able to do stuff, it doesn't quite work as good. But Koptic Reanimators don't really want to be doing anything. They're not that good at it, they've only got 12-inch range. So they're a perfect candidate for secondary actions. As for the secondaries that they can do, behind the enemy line, there's not really going to happen. They do move fairly fast for what they do. I think they move 8 inches. Hypercrypt maybe, but other than that, it's not as easy. Established Locust, yep. Centre of the battlefield is an option. Engage on the front, yep. Sabotage, I'm going to say no, because they're quite tall. And yes, you're protected on the ground floor, but because there's no windows open, but the second floor, or first floor, I think Americans call first floor and second floor different, don't they? I'm sure they do it like that. But anyway, the next floor up is what I mean. They can be shot at, their toes are in an objective, windows are open on that floor onwards. Area Denial, yep. Cleanse, yep. Actions in the no man's land, and recover assets, yes, definitely, in fact. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 7, doable. But the key point though, 75 points again, that's a nice sweet spot. Everything so far has been 75 points or less. Next we've got Koptic Sac Swarms. Now these are 40 points, these are the dirt cheap stuff. They move 10 inches, which is very fast. They've got no OC, that is a key point, even though it's a negative. They don't shoot. Again, it's a negative, but if you're not going to shoot, then you may be doing the actions. Unless you really want to charge with them, then you're going to forfeit your action. And they're difficult to see, which is a good bonus because you can be going up the battlefield really hidden in them ruins or behind them ruins. You can't be seen. Lovely. Secondary wise, behind enemy lines, I think yes in this situation. I know they move similar speeds to the Reanimator, a little bit quicker in fact. But because they can't be seen that easily, they're very sneaky. And also your opponent isn't always going to want to go out their way to delete 40 points of our Necron units. They're going to want to get something more juicier. So I think they've got the capability of sneaking in behind enemy lines. They don't need OC to do behind enemy lines because it's a location secondary as well. Established Locus, however, does require OC. So they would need a command barge or they would need a cryptek to gain OC. So therefore they need a bit more synergy. It's not going to cost 40 points, it's going to now cost more. So I'll put that in red. Engage on all fronts, they're perfect for that. Absolutely perfect. Sabotage. You know what, that's another debatable one because they're small. No, it's an action. I take it back. You need synergy. You need a cryptek or a command barge. So therefore it's not 40 points. So on their own, they're not actually able to do it. Area denial, yes, that's just a location. And then cleanse and recover assets again requires synergy with other units. So I've put it in red. So on their own for 40 points, you can do 3 of the 7, no problem. And all the other ones are actions. So you do need some assistance, which will cost you a lot more points. Necron Deathmarks are next. We've got key points, 60 points. They're cheaper now. They're getting really cheap for us. 60 points. They've got Deep Strike, which is beautiful. Just like the Hexmark Destroyer, you can pop in anywhere, 9 inches away from enemy models. And they only shoot. So if you don't have a good shot on anything, or you weren't planning on shooting anyway, then you may as well do an action if you can. Because you're not going to be charging with Deathmarks because they suck in combat. So that is a negative / positive at the same time. Secondary wise, behind enemy lines, absolutely perfect for it. They've only got small bases. Getting 5 into a location is fairly easy unless your opponent has screened off really well. Established Locus, same applies, but this time you're not going to shoot. Fine, that's okay. Engaging on front, again, similar. Sabotage, they're small, aren't they? They're small. They could do it. I put it in red, but they could do it. That one's debatable. I mean, you're deep striking them most likely, so I don't know. I really struggle with the sabotage secondary with our codex. I'm not really sure what's the best option to do sabotage. Really don't know. Area denial, they could. I think there's better options, but they could do it. Cleanse, yes, and recover assets, definitely. So I've gone with 6 out of the 7 there. Sabotage is like maybe 6.5 with sabotage. They could probably do it. Flayed One's another cheap unit. Same points actually. 60 points for a unit of 5. And they've got infiltrators, which is good because you can deploy in the no man's land 9 inches away from enemy models and enemy deployment zone. So you can get yourself straight onto, like area denial, recover assets. Well, I'm jumping the gun here. Let's go back a step. They've only got melee. They're not going to be shooting, so therefore, if you've not got a charge lined up, if you even wanted to charge, then an action is there, ready and waiting. But secondaries, behind enemy lines, I'd say no. Even though you've got infiltrators, you're 9 inches away from the enemy DZ. By the time you've moved, maybe you could advance on it, but you're probably going to get killed turn 1. You're probably going to get killed turn 1, unless they sort of come out of reserves maybe, but you've got better options to do stuff like that. So I wouldn't with Flayed Ones. Established Locus, you could do it in the centre of the battlefield. Yeah, turn 1, bang, done. Engage on fronts, yeah. Depends where they are located, I suppose. Sabotage, it's like the Deathmarks really. I'm sort of on the fence with Sabotage and Flayed Ones. They probably could actually do it. I've put it in red, maybe it should be in orange. I'll give it like a half a point maybe. Area denial, 100% they could do that. It's perfect for them. Cleanse, action, yeah, perfect. And recover assets, yeah, same again. Now that it ends at the end of our turn, recover assets, it's much nicer to do. It's very similar to cleanse in a way, except it's not on an objective. So yeah, Flayed Ones can do 5.5 out of the 7, which is fair. Yeah, that's good for 60 points as well. That's pretty reasonable. Lich Guard I've added into this list, which is the next unit, 85 points. So this is the most expensive so far. 85 points. They've got better durability, so they can literally hold their shields up if you've selected the shield option. They've got the invuln save, so they're much better for doing certain things. They're not going to be shooting, so if you've not got a charge ready to go, then an action is perfect. So they've only got the melee option. Secondaries behind enemy lines, not really. They're kind of slow. They're kind of slow unless you're getting them out of a Night Scythe or something, or Hyperphase, which you're not really going to do with Lich Guard. So I'm going to say no for behind enemy lines. Establish Locust, centre of the board. Yeah, why not? Engage in all fronts. Yeah, most units can do that really. Sabotage I've put yes, because it ends at the end of your opponent's turn, right? This, out of the list so far, this is probably the most durable of the units. 2 wounds apiece, -1 to wound them if the strength is more, if there's a noble in the unit, which actually requires synergy I suppose, but you're gonna do it. I know that sounds a bit, is that the right word? Contradicting is the right word. But you're likely gonna do it anyway. And the invuln save. We've got area denial, they can even fight as well, which is good. So anything that's within 3 inches of the centre or 6 inches of the centre, they can put some hyperphase swords into them to try and clear some models off, and then just stand and hold your ground. Cleanse, definitely, and recover assets, definitely. Now that it ends at our turn, it's really easy. So 6 out of 7, good, definitely good. You can do them, no problem. Fidian Destroyers, and they're 80 points, so one of the more expensive units here in this list. They return to reserves. I put res there. I was like, what is res? It's on the screen as res. Returns to reserves with their what's it called? Their tunneling horrors ability. They can get back into reserves and kind of go wherever they want every turn. Very useful. It's like Hypercrypt Legion, except it's not, because they can do it in any detachment, which is kind of good. They've got Deep Strike, which is perfect for this ability, in fact, because you literally can come in and out anywhere, wherever there's a gap, enemy deployment zone, if you want to come back into your home deployment zone, anywhere you want. Beautiful. And you can even do it turn 1 if you start on the battlefield and you go second. Come off on the end of your opponent's turn 1 and then come back in your turn 1. Doable. So they don't shoot, so if there's no charge lined up, then an action is absolutely perfect for them. They've only got the melee. Behind enemy lines, perfect. Easy. Very easy. Like a Hexmark without the lone op, I suppose. Can do it. Establish Locus, same. Whether it's the centre, enemy deployment zone, do it. Easy. Engage in all fronts, yes, of course. Sabotage, no. I keep coming back to this. Sabotage, it's a real thorn. You'll have to let me know, guys, what are you using to score Sabotage out of the Necron Codex? Because I kind of struggle with that one, and it's normally one of those where I burn a CP to get new orders, because I just hate trying to do Sabotage. Area Denial, yes. They can run there. They move 10 inches, or they can deep strike there, tunnel in. Cleanse, definitely yes, and recover assets, definitely yes. So there's quite a lot there for them to do. 6 out of 7 of the secondaries that we're talking about today, they can do, not a problem. Tomb Blades, 75 points for 3. They've got Scout 9 inches, which is very useful. Kind of similar to Flayed ones in a way. You can get them, pre-game. It's not pre-game, but you know what I mean. You can get them into the certain areas of the no man's land to do certain secondaries. They've got a 12-inch move anyway, so they are rapid, and they move after shooting as well, which is super good. Their speed is actually ridiculous. And they've got Stealth, which assists you with potentially Sabotage. That's the one. It's the one really there, isn't it? Out of all of them, that requires a bit of defense is Sabotage. But out of all the 7, yeah, they can do all of them purely because of their speed. They've not got Deep Strike, but their speed can get them behind enemy lines. Sometimes turn 1 in certain mission maps. Turn 2, yeah. Establish Locus, yeah. Engage in the front, obviously. Sabotage, we always debate that one. Area Denial, yes. Cleanse, if you want to spend an action, it's just 75 points. So it's, yes, you're losing out on a bit of shooting. A bit of particle beamer, devastating wounds and stuff like that. But for 75 points, you can afford to give up the shooting for one phase just to get that card and score. And get a new card, because you need to be rolling these cards. You can't be holding on to the same card for 2-3 turns. You're not going to win a game like that. Cleanse, recover assets, yes, they can do those, not a problem. Although, With the action secondaries, I should point this out. Obviously, if you're going to move, shoot, move, you've obviously shot, so you can't do an action if you're shooting, so you're losing a bit of movement after the shooting as well. So just be aware of that one. Can't move, shoot, move, and action at the same time. Then we come on to the final unit that I picked out as a secondary hero within the Necron's Codex, Tryoutorians, the most expensive unit I've got in this list. I debated putting them in, but I put them in because some people do love them. I absolutely hate the Tryoutorians, but I'm going to be fair and we're going to put them in. 100 points, they've got deep strike, very important, 10-inch movement, pretty quick. They can fall back and charge and all that kind of stuff, which may help as well for certain secondaries. Behind enemy lines, of course, they can deep strike, so they can do it. Establish locus, same applies there. They can deep strike. Engage on the fronts, same again. And the movement will help as well for further down the road, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 maybe, if they've already entered the battlefield. You've still got movement to play with. That's good. Sabotage, yeah, you know. Area denial, yes, cleanse, action. It's an expensive action, 100 points, but it's there. And recover assets, yes, they can. But you're going to be spending 100 points, so in terms of points efficiency for those secondaries, it's not as good as, for example, going with some death marks, which are 40 points less. And if I just have a little scroll to those death marks, where were they? Death marks, there they are. Death marks could also do pretty much all those secondaries as well, but they're not as quick once they've deep struck in. So that's the part where you lose out. They both deep strike in, but death marks don't move as quick. So there you have it, guys. They're my Necron Codex action heroes, or secondary objective hero scoring heroes. If you've got any others to add in this list, put them down in the comments down below, and make sure you are subscribed on your exits. See you next time, guys.